I used to like Ubisoft. Really. I used to genuinely think they were a cool company. I didn't really know anything about them until I started religiously watching E3 presentations back in the day. Back when E3 was still kicking around, all the big companies showed up every single time, and for a few days each summer, I could plunk myself down on the couch and watch presentations morning, noon, and night. Good gravy, I miss those days. And this was when I discovered Ubisoft, in a sense. I knew about them, mainly from Rayman and the launch titles they made for the Wii. Yes, I was one of those poor folks duped into buying Red Steel.
You will really feel like both your hands have entered the screen. You are in the game.
But I didn't know much about them as a company. I wasn't familiar with all their different series. But after watching one of their E3 presentations, I thought, you know what? This Ubisoft ain't so bad. I really appreciated how they seemed to be interested in creating a wide range of experiences. They had their AAA series, which seemed really impressive, if a little repetitive. Even when I didn't play the games, it was still fun to watch the reveals and marvel at the graphics and whatnot. I did play Assassin's Creed Black Flag and loved the heck out of it, though we'll be talking about that more in a bit. But then in addition to the AAA stuff, Ubisoft had smaller projects, platformers like the Rayman games, indie-sized, artful little gems like Child of Light and Valiant Hearts. And their E3 presentations were cringy, sure, but all E3 presentations were cringy. That was the whole point. And at the very least, you could say these ones were colorful and interesting. I knew Ubisoft was a huge gaming corporation, but it felt at least a little bit like these were some people who liked making games. They worked on so many different projects that I even got a little excited wondering what they might reveal next. For a few years, I genuinely looked forward to watching their show each E3. And even as recently as the beginning of the Switch generation, Ubisoft was putting on good shows, releasing cool games. They did Mario and Rabbids, which was awesome, and no one else liked Starlink, but I will forever stand by that game. I thought it was neat. I even did sponsorships for those games. Ubisoft let me make some silly skits. We were all chummy with each other. It was great. What a company. Wow, how things change. It's just amazing how dramatically things can change. The older you get, the more you find that you can never count on something good to be good forever. Like, it's sad, but it's true. Many things, no matter how good they are, have a tendency to just go bad. And my opinion of Ubisoft could not possibly be lower than it is right now. Like even if they actively tried to get me to hate them in some ridiculous scenario, like they deliberately sabotaged my opinion, the end result would still be basically more or less what we already have now. The respect I had for them is 100% gone. Yeah, the admiration, the faith I had in them as developers, all of it completely gone. That well has run bone dry. Now, that's not to say the company is incapable of making good games. They just put out a really cool-looking Prince of Persia Metroidvania, of all things, and I hear it's amazing. Then Mario and Rabbids Sparks of Hope looked like a really cool sequel. Ubisoft is a huge company. They've got plenty of passionate and talented developers on the payroll. And in the increasingly rare occasions those devs are allowed to, they are very much capable of making great stuff. They are not the problem. It ain't the crew, it's the captains running the ship. For starters, there's the whole employee abuse thing. I won't go too deep into that, I already did a whole video about it. But just to sum it up, all that time Ubisoft was making cool games and doing silly dance numbers on stage, they were also cultivating a toxic and abusive work environment where the top executives were allowed to harass anyone they pleased with zero repercussions. And even since all that came to light, they have done essentially nothing to fix the problem. So that's already plenty reason to just be entirely done with Ubisoft as a company. It is run by very, very evil people. And I'm not a fan of evil people. It's just not my thing. But even beyond that, Ubisoft has consistently revealed itself to be just another AAA publisher. Over the last 10 years or so, the industry has gotten nastier and nastier. More focus-tested, trend-chasing schlock, more aggressive and psychologically manipulative monetization, more bare-bones, yet fully priced experiences propped up by paid post-launch content, etc., etc. Not every company has gone down this road. Plenty have decided to hold their ground, keep doing their own thing, not sink so low. But one company that's been leading the charge, flying a green flag with a golden $sign on it, Ubisoft. Good old Ubisoft. In this increasingly scummy gaming landscape, they have happily embraced the scumminess. They have slathered themselves in it, made it their home. When live service games became the big moneymakers, Ubisoft basically said, all we make now is live service games. Everything else is worthless. When microtransactions became commonplace, they were eagerly adapted by Ubisoft. And multiplayer games, that's one thing. It's easier to monetize a multiplayer game, especially if it's free to play. But what about single player games? Oh, but not just single player games. Full price ones. Assassin's Creed sold very, very well. When they started releasing them every single year, there started to be a problem and they had to pull in the reins a bit, but for the most part, it is an incredibly profitable series. Not profitable enough though, it seems. Ubisoft introduced RPG elements to the series, not because this was a natural evolution of the formula, but so they could sell players XP multipliers. I'm not making this up, and frankly, to this day, I am appalled that this happened, and it just kind of happened, and it's just sitting there having had happened, and we all just kind of have to deal with it. They introduced XP into their games exclusively so they could drip feed XP to the player in order to frustrate them into purchasing multipliers. It's unfathomable. Like, it's disgusting on such a deep, deep level. It is an insult to the customer, and at the risk of sounding all hoity-toity, the art of games. If you are doing this, like if this is how you're monetizing your games, you are clearly, so crystal clear transparently, only exclusively in it for the money. You clearly do not have even one shred of care or even humanity for your audience. Just like none. That's it. You're the scammer, they're the mark. That's literally all this is. So yeah, I think Ubisoft is pretty awful. We're establishing that pretty firmly right now. But you know what? You know what? I do have to admire one of their qualities. It is their unshakable reserve, their passionate dedication to being awful. All that trend chasing, that pledge to focus almost entirely on live service games, yeah, it's not working out for them. That's the thing about live service multiplayer games. If they work, then they make you a lot of money. But if they don't, if they just don't click with players, then you've got yourself an extremely expensive flop on your hands. These kinds of games take so much money, so much infrastructure. They've got to support millions of players. They've got to have content planned years in advance. They've got to run well. They've got to be polished. They've got to really stand out from the vast ocean of similar games, all vying for the market's attention. But there can only be so many popular multiplayer games at any given time. And Ubisoft just keeps making games that people don't care about. Their live service games are failing, or otherwise just not performing as well as they want. Their multiplayer series that used to be successful are morphing to fit the live service model, and people aren't having it. One would think that someone in charge might look at all this and realize, hey, this whole live service thing isn't really working out. I think this might have been one of those bandwagon things people are always talking about, a foolish attempt to capitalize on what's already successful by chasing trends and creating soulless, focus-tested slop for the masses. Maybe we should take a moment to rethink things. Yeah, you'd expect that from a reasonable person. But the dudes in Ubisoft's captain's cabin gathered around the table with all the maps and stuff on it. As recently as last year, CEO Yves Guillemot was like, "We love live service games. Live service games are life." I mean, Just can't keep this guy down. What a little fighter. Then on the single player front, they essentially built an empire on making games using the exact same formula again and again and again. Assassin's Creed and Far Cry? For a while it felt like they were essentially the same games but with different stories and camera perspectives. The gameplay loops were just so similar. Today they've diverged a fair amount, but Ubisoft has put out so many games from each series. And pumping out games like mad, that used to work for Ubisoft, so they kept doing it. And particularly in the case of Far Cry, people are caring less and less. Reception to a lot of these games is growing more and more tepid. So, what should Ubisoft do? Change course? No, not on your life. How about we just make sure that all these games ship with more microtransactions, more XP multipliers and premium currencies and special items you can only get by spending even more than the $60 or now $70 you already spent on this stinking thing. It seems like no matter what happens, no matter how much they fail, they refuse to learn. Shmuimo himself has even admitted here and there that, yeah, they're turning out some real stinkers and they need to do better. He says that, but he just says it, and then that's it. Nothing changes. They keep making stinkers. Which finally brings us to the analogy this video was built upon. And the reason I am really sad I don't have my green screen yet, because in the last Ubisoft video I had this thing where I'm looking and there's like a bridge and it's burning, and this time I could be here, it could be a ship and it's sinking, it would be awesome, but oh well. Point is, Ubisoft is a sinking ship. Now, that's not to say that they're at risk of being entirely sunk 100% anytime soon. It's hard to sink a ship this big. Despite all the failures, they're still making some money. Reception to many games may be tepid, but these AAA games do appeal to very wide audiences, so sales are often okay. And all the microtransactions, I'm sure those help. They're there for a reason, and I have no doubt that there are plenty of people out there who succumb to the call of those fancy, shiny currencies and items and such. And sometimes, Ubisoft will put out a genuine hit. Assassin's Creed Valhalla was a big financial success. The first in the series to hit $1 billion in revenue. Thanks in no small part, I'm sure, to the abundance of DLC and microtransactions sold alongside it. And of course, big companies always have tricks up their sleeves. Firing employees and making the remaining ones work harder, that's a popular one. Putting more microtransactions in their games, thinking of even more sinister ways to manipulate people into spending more money, you know, that's always on the docket. They've got options, and they've got control of some really big IPs. They're going to keep making money. But I can't help but see a trend here. You know, I can't help but see a trajectory. More and more of their games are failing or performing well under expectations, and they're barely managing to put out just enough successful titles to keep the lights on. The live service model isn't working, so they're leaning into it even harder. You know what that makes me think of? A crew desperately bailing water. Sure, maybe the ship won't be completely submerged anytime soon, but the lower decks are flooded, and that water line is creeping upward slowly but surely. The crew is working hard to bail out as much water as they can, and it's working. But how long will that last? This all happened because the captain sailed the ship into treacherous waters in search of treasure. But even though it's becoming more and more clear that there is just not any treasure around here, he's only sailing deeper in. Ubisoft is getting by, but their success feels tenuous. It feels unsustainable. They're doing the wrong thing and failing because of it, and only doubling and tripling and quadrupling down. Their games are selling okay, but public opinion of the company is probably at an all-time low. And on top of all that, their horrible management is catching up with them, and they're facing all sorts of lawyers and judges and regulators. It feels like every week they're getting in trouble for something. And even though they're still making money, the business is still working, technically, I get the feeling that I am not the only person who feels the ship is taking on water. Let's take a look at their stock prices. When they were at the top of their game, pumping out titles like mad, milking that Ubisoft formula for an audience that wasn't quite sick of it yet, their stock price was very high, peaking in 2018. Then they saw a dip, but in 2020, when everyone was at home playing games and pretty much every game company was doing very well, they saw another huge increase, helped a bunch by the release of Assassin's Creed Valhalla. But since then, sinking, sinking, sinking. Their stock value has dropped by a whopping 75%. The company is worth a mere quarter of what it was, and is worth only about as much as it was way back in 2015, when they were just starting to really get somewhere. These numbers are dismal. Here's the thing about an entertainment company, though. Its success hinges on putting out products that people want to buy. You never quite know what's gonna happen next, or how well any one product will do. This Ubisoft ship? There's still time for it to correct its course. We can't just look at what happened in the past. We've got to look to the future. We've got to look ahead. So what's on the horizon for the SS Ubisoft? Where's its next port of call? Oh, I've been looking forward to this for so long. I've mentioned it here and there in videos, but I have been dreaming of the day I could really talk about it. And I cannot even believe how perfectly this plays into the analogy. I mean, it created the analogy. Ubisoft, they're making my job so easy. They just gave this to me. Just handed it to me in a neat little package all tied up in a bow. A YouTuber could not possibly ask for more. It's just too perfect. Sorry to rewind again, but remember how I mentioned Assassin's Creed Black Flag? Golly, that game is good. I really love ships and the Age of Sail and all that, so I got the game looking for a good pirate simulator, expecting to mostly ignore all the assassin stuff. But it turned out that the assassin stuff only enhances the pirate stuff, and the whole package isn't just a terrific pirate simulator. It's just a phenomenal game overall. Every kind of piratey activity you can do. Naval combat with other ships, disabling and boarding those ships to add them to your fleet, managing that fleet to make money, fishing, diving for buried loot, attacking strongholds, raiding storehouses, getting in swashbuckling fights with all sorts of folks. The world is massive and completely seamless, so you can sail wherever you want, and at any time you can just jump off your ship, swim to an island, and explore it for ruins and treasure and rare animal pelts and silly Ubisoft collectibles that are completely pointless, but when you're really invested in a game, they're great. Black Flag is incredible, and I actually put it on my list of the best games of the decade. After I finished it and played it for who even knows how many hours, I wanted more. Now, it is worth noting that Ubisoft did create a straightforward follow-up to Black Flag, Assassin's Creed Rogue, but they gave it to a studio who had never made an Assassin's Creed game before, threw the game together in well under a single year, didn't market it. I honestly did not know about its existence until years after the fact, I'm not even kidding. And they only made it in the first place because they wanted to put Unity on 8th gen consoles only, so they needed something for people still playing their PS3s and Xbox 360s. And despite all that, the game still turned out pretty okay, and while they haven't revealed solid numbers, we know it's still sold decently based on what they've said about it. That was all Ubisoft could muster when it came to an actual follow-up to Black Flag. A comedically rushed sequel scraped together purely to help fill the holiday slot during one transitional year, then quickly forgotten. No, they had their eyes on a greater prize. Because, you know, a lot of people seem to be really into this whole pirate thing. I wasn't the only one who liked Black Flag. The game was so successful that Ubisoft got it in their heads that they might have something here. Maybe, just maybe, there's a market for a full-on pirate game without the Assassin's Creed stuff. And everyone on planet Earth was like, yes, yes, that is such an amazing idea. Please do that. The funny thing is, though, that was such a good idea on Ubisoft's part, yet that right there, at that exact point, right at the very conception of their new pirate IP, was the end of their good ideas. Because what was starting to take off around that time? The live service model. So instead of doing what literally everyone wanted, making a game like Black Flag, except with its own world and even more pirate stuff, they decided to make a primarily multiplayer, always online, live service game. Actually, they decided to give the game even less pirate stuff than Black Flag, making the focus almost entirely on naval combat, without any of the actual sword fighting or island exploration or anything. Just boats shooting at each other. That's it. And at E3 2017, Ubisoft revealed Skull and Bones. I was there on my couch. I remember that show quite well. That trailer filled me with pure joy. It appeared as though we were getting that full pirate game after all. It was a dream come true. And it even had a sea monster in it, suggesting a much more fantastical, fictional world, which was everything I could have wanted. But then I read about the game after the show. Oh no, this wasn't what I wanted. This wasn't what I wanted at all. And judging by the reaction, it wasn't what anyone wanted. I couldn't find a single person who was happy about this direction the game was taking. This was, quite simply, an objectively bad idea. I mean, I could see the rationale behind the decision. Let's take a game that was good, turn it multiplayer, and get people hooked on microtransactions and battle passes and all that junk. I mean, a semi-realistic online ship battling game? That was at least very unique. The money-making potential was there, I suppose. But do you know how many people bought Black Flag? I looked it up when I was researching this video, and I found articles saying it sold 11 million units, which was the last concrete number I could find, so I was ready to go with that. But then while editing this video, Kane noticed that those articles were from 2014, only 1 year after the game came out. And I'm lucky I had him checking my work, because then he found this tweet. 34 million people have played Black Flag. The game has been pretty steeply discounted here and there, I'm sure, and I think Ubisoft has probably had a few free play days for their Assassin's Creed titles, but that number is still absurd. Even 11 million is absurd, but 34 million? Clearly, when it came to making another bigger pirate game, the money was already on the table. They already had the makings of another massive hit on their hands, of an exciting and very profitable new IP that could support countless sequels. Clearly, there was a market for this big pirate game. But what do we always say about companies like this? They don't want money. They don't want a lot of money. They want all the money. They didn't want another successful game. They wanted a live service product that generated an endless supply of cash from addicted players. That was all they would accept. So, to throw in even more ridiculous metaphors, they took their big, delicious piece of cake and threw it in the trash. For they would settle for nothing less than the whole darn cake. So when people complained about how Skull and Bones looked, what did those lion-hearted heroes at Ubisoft do? Did they listen? Did they realize that something wasn't right? No, they stayed the course. And what followed was a long, drawn-out and even nightmarish development process. An arduous voyage, to annoyingly keep the whole ship analogy going. E3s came and went, and no new trailers dropped. After a while, no one knew where the game even was. Ubisoft said it was still coming, but something was not right. Then the reports started coming in. The game had been scrapped and restarted multiple times. People who playtested it said it wasn't any fun. The whole project was turning out to be a flaming wreck. The game got delayed, then delayed again. And again, and again. Honestly, I don't know if anyone knows exactly how many times it was delayed. I think I think you'd need a chronometer and a sextant to figure it out. How many times was Skull and Bones delayed? I don't know. What phase is the moon in and what direction is the wind going? That'll just for starters. So many people wondered why Ubisoft didn't just cancel the darn thing. But then it came out that the game was funded by the Singaporean government, and Ubisoft was contractually obligated to finish it and produce a new IP using Singaporean talent. So no matter how rough those waters were, no matter how doomed the expedition seemed, they absolutely had to keep going. This game has been in development now for over 10 years. 7 years have passed since its reveal. I can't fathom how much money they must have spent on it. I mean, I truly cannot imagine. Oh, but this is where the story really pays off. When they revealed Skull and Bones, we all said that the idea of a game like Black Flag, except only the naval combat and none of the other stuff, was a flat-out stupid idea. And over these 7 years, they have rebooted and retooled the game more times than we even know. People have told them their game wasn't fun, so they've just kept working at it, trying desperately to produce a good, finished product they could actually release. And now, against all odds, the game is finally out. The battered and bloodied and scurvy-ridden crew has reached their destination at last. And what's the game like? What format did they eventually end up going with? Well, it's like Black Flag, except only the naval combat and none of the other stuff. I've not played it myself, but I have heard many early reports, and it's literally exactly what they advertised in 2017, and everyone told them was a bad idea. You can walk around in your little town area and talk to NPCs and stuff, but everything else is done on your ship. It is nothing more than naval combat. Activities we were once able to do ourselves are now reduced to mere cutscenes or unenjoyable mini-games. As far as piratey stuff goes, no, as far as actual gameplay goes, it's literally just less than Black Flag. And from the sound of it, it's also, wow, humongous surprise, not very fun. Some people are having fun with it, and I'm not doubting that there's some good stuff in there. It clearly leans a lot harder into the quests and the progression and all that, and that's certainly stuff I would want in a game like this. But when you remove all that other stuff that made the experience feel like a real pirate simulator, when you strip away a dozen elements and leave only one or two intact, I fail to see the point. And for every cautiously optimistic take I read a dozen more from people who played the beta, found it to be a slow, grindy slog, and uninstalled without looking back. Even if there ends up being an okay game in there somewhere, and some people take a liking to it, it's so abundantly clear that this is not the game Ubisoft could have made. Also, who even knows how aggressively the game will be monetized? That's a great big question mark at the moment, but you know they're gonna want to make back at least a little money on this thing, and if they end up selling XP multipliers and time savers and loot and resources and stuff for real money, I have to wonder how grindy they made the base game in order to encourage those purchases. Because including those kinds of purchases means purposefully sabotaging your game to make it less fun. This game was already so troubled, and yet I would not be surprised if they made it more grindy and less fun just to try to squeeze a few more pennies out of the people who do manage to get into it against all odds. Ooh, I gotta calm down. And I also can't help but mention that it's not like other companies aren't making pirate games. Sea of Thieves is right there. That is an online pirate game that's apparently pretty great and succeeds as a pirate game and a multiplayer game. Ubisoft knew the bar was high, yet staunchly refused to aim for it. And again, that dedication is commendable. They could have produced 2 or 3 games in the time it took them to make Skull and Bones. And at any point in the process, during any of the rumored reboots and retoolings, they could have altered course. They could have just put in the work to give us all the pirate trimmings we wanted. They could have made the game anything. It could have been the biggest, most incredible pirate game in history. Or at the very least, it could have been another Black Flag. What were they even doing during development? What were they even working on? What were they even improving? I don't know, but you gotta hand it to them. They stayed that course. No matter what happened, through thick and through thin, even when the wind was against them and they were taking on water, they pressed on. They would make their mediocre live service Black Flag facsimile or die trying. And now that they've finally done it, the most embarrassing thing is that they've got to release the game with a straight face and act like nothing is wrong. Like this is a game people have actually been looking forward to and not making fun of for the last 7 years. Yves Guillemot defended the $70 price recently, claiming that this was the world's first quadruple A game, which is... It's so intensely funny and gross and sad that I can't even dwell on it here. That statement is just too powerful. Oh. Quadruple A. This game. This is the one that you call quadruple. I can't. Okay, no. Gotta move on. Sorry. For over 10 years, Skull and Bones has been one massive leak in a ship full of holes. The ship is still floating, but only because the crew is bailing water so hard. And it's worth noting, Ubisoft is now in trouble with Singapore for mistreating the employees working on Skull and Bones. I'm no analyst, and I don't know what Ubisoft's projections look like, but I don't think there is much chance they're gonna turn a profit on this game. And you know what? This isn't the only game of theirs that's been languishing in development hell, hemorrhaging money, constantly teasing fans who have already lost interest. Beyond Good and Evil was a very cool single-player game that eventually gained cult classic status. Beyond Good and Evil 2 was announced in 2008, then we didn't hear a single thing about it until it was re-revealed, funny enough, at E3 2017, right along with Skull and Bones. Yeah, that was a really great show, we thought. And ever since then, same story. Long periods of nothing. Reports that Ubisoft doesn't know what they're doing. At one point, they brought up the game again with another trailer, a re-reveal as it were, and then, poof, gone again. For years now, the game has officially taken the crown for longest development of a AAA game, beating even Duke Nukem Forever. I mean that literally. Beyond Good and Evil 2 has broken the actual record. And the only information we currently have about the game, the only thing that Ubisoft has shared about it, it's going to be an always online shared world with multiplayer. Ubisoft is a bad company. It is run by people who have no idea what they're doing. And an evil company that finds success through abuse and manipulation is already bad enough. But one that does all that evil stuff, but still manages to fail because they're also just so incredibly inept, it's just a whole other level of sad. So that's all the stuff I've been wanting to say about Ubisoft and Skull and Bones. Really, I just want another cool pirate game. Man, like really, I just want a new Black Flag. I played Rogue. It was pretty good. I think I liked Black Flag more, but like I want something new, you know? I want the next one. I want a cool, new, single-player pirate game. But I mean, hey, I don't know. Maybe we'll get lucky. Even if Skull and Bones ended up the way it did, maybe after all that, someone at Ubisoft will decide to take all the lessons learned and just make a new Assassin's Creed with pirate stuff. I mean, I'd certainly take that over nothing. Actually, let's see. What's the latest Ubisoft news? Ubisoft is reportedly developing a Black Flag remake.